The morning sun painted the wheat fields gold as Dae-ho Kim walked through his crops. He had been farming this land for 20 years. Every morning was the same routine. Check the soil, look for pests, water where needed. It was simple work that made him happy. But this morning was different. Strange lights had danced across the sky the night before. His neighbors called it a meteor shower. Dae-ho had watched from his porch as bright streaks fell toward the mountains. Some seemed to land close to his farm. Now, as he walked through the tall wheat stalks, he found something that made him stop. The grain was flattened in 3 circular patterns. Each circle was perfectly round and about 10 feet wide. The wheat inside each circle glowed with a soft blue light. Dae-ho knelt down and touched the glowing stalks. They felt warm under his fingers. The light pulsed gently like a heartbeat. He had never seen anything like this in all his years of farming. A soft chirping sound came from the center of the nearest circle. It sounded like a baby bird, but different somehow. More musical. Dae-ho pushed through the glowing wheat toward the sound. What he found made him gasp. 3 small creatures lay curled together in the center of the circle. They were no bigger than house cats. Their bodies were covered in scales that looked like glass. The scales shifted between blue and silver and green as they breathed. Tiny wings folded against their backs. Their eyes were closed, but Dae-ho could see golden light glowing behind their eyelids. One of the creatures lifted its head weakly. Its eyes opened, and Dae-ho saw pools of liquid gold looking at him. The creature made a soft, trilling sound. It was hurt. All 3 of them were hurt. Dae-ho had always been gentle with injured animals. He had rescued countless birds and small creatures over the years. These strange beings were no different. Without hesitation, he carefully scooped up the first creature. Its scales felt smooth and warm. The golden light in its eyes seemed to recognize his kindness. The other 2 creatures stirred as he picked them up. They were so light he could carry all 3 easily. Their wings were torn and their scales were dim in places. Whatever had brought them here had not been gentle. Dae-ho carried them back to his farmhouse. His wife Hae-jin was in the kitchen preparing breakfast. She looked up as he entered and nearly dropped her spoon. "What are those?" she asked. Her eyes were wide with wonder rather than fear. "I found them in the wheat field," Dae-ho said. "They are hurt. We need to help them." Hae-jin had the same gentle heart as her husband. She quickly cleared the kitchen table and brought soft towels. Together they made a warm nest for the 3 creatures. The beings seemed to understand they were being helped. They curled close together, but kept their golden eyes on Dae-ho and Hae-jin. Occasionally, they would make soft musical sounds to each other. The sounds had patterns like they were talking. Dae-ho brought water in a shallow dish. The creatures sniffed at it cautiously. When the first one drank, the water began to glow with the same blue light as the wheat. The creature drank more, eagerly then. Its scales grew a little brighter. Hae-jin tried feeding them rice and vegetables, but they showed no interest in solid food. However, when she brought honey mixed with warm milk, they drank it hungrily. Their scales pulsed with warm light as they fed. Over the next few hours, the creatures grew stronger. Their wings stopped drooping, and their scales began to shine more brightly. They started moving around the kitchen table, exploring their new surroundings. One of them discovered Hae-jin's flower pot on the windowsill. It touched a wilting rose with its small paw. Light flowed from its scales into the plant. The rose straightened and bloomed more beautifully than ever before. Dae-ho and Hae-jin exchanged amazed looks. These were no ordinary animals. The sound of a car in the driveway made them all look up. Their daughter, Yoonbi, was visiting from the university in Seoul. She was studying something called xenobiology. Dae-ho was never quite sure what that meant, but she was always excited about strange life forms. Yoonbi burst through the kitchen door, talking rapidly about her classes. She stopped mid-sentence when she saw the 3 glowing creatures on the table. "Father," she whispered, "where did you find these?" In the wheat field this morning, Dae-ho said. They were hurt, so I brought them home. Yoonbi moved slowly toward the table. Her training had taught her to be careful around unknown species, but these creatures seemed calm and curious rather than dangerous. One of them tilted its head and chirped at her. She could swear it sounded like a greeting. "These are not from Earth," she said quietly. "Look at their bone structure. Those wing membranes. The way their scales conduct bioluminescence. Father, these are alien beings." "Alien," Hyejin repeated. "Like from space." The creatures seemed to understand they were being discussed. They huddled closer together and their scales dimmed slightly. They looked nervous. Dae-ho reached out and gently stroked the nearest one. Its scales brightened again and it made a contented sound. "It does not matter where they come from," he said. "They needed help, and now they are safe." Yoonbi spent the rest of the day observing the creatures. She took notes on their behavior and tried to understand their communication patterns. The beings watched her with obvious intelligence. When she made certain sounds, they would tilt their heads and respond with musical notes of their own. As evening approached, the creatures became more active. Their scales grew brighter, and they began to explore beyond the kitchen table. They moved with grace despite their small size. Their wings fluttered, but they did not try to fly yet. That night, Dae-ho made a comfortable bed for them in the barn. The creatures seemed to prefer the open space, and they could see the stars through the barn windows. They curled together, and their scales pulsed in rhythm like synchronized heartbeats. Dae-ho watched them sleep and wondered what tomorrow would bring. He had found 3 impossible beings in his wheat field. His simple life as a farmer had suddenly become much more complicated, but as he looked at their peaceful faces and glowing scales, he knew he had done the right thing. Whatever these creatures were and wherever they came from, they were safe now. That was all that mattered to him. 3 days had passed since Dae-ho found the creatures in his wheat field. They were growing stronger each day. Their scales now glowed bright enough to light up the barn at night. Yoonbi had named them based on their different colored lights. Biol glowed blue like starlight. Haneul shimmered silver like the daytime sky. Nuri pulsed with green light like growing plants. The creatures had learned to trust the Kim family completely. They followed Dae-ho around the farm during his morning chores. When Hyejin cooked in the kitchen, they would sit on the windowsill and watch her with curious golden eyes. They seemed to understand human routines and emotions. Yoonbi made an amazing discovery on the 3rd morning. She was taking notes about their behavior when Biol approached her dirty water glass. The water was muddy from her field work the day before. Biol breathed gently over the surface of the water. Blue light flowed from the creature's mouth like glowing mist. Where the light touched the water, it became crystal clear. All the dirt and impurities vanished. Yoonbi tested the water with her portable lab kit. It was not just clean, it was perfectly pure. "Father, come quickly," she called to Dae-ho. "You need to see this." Dae-ho hurried into the kitchen. Yoonbi showed him the glass of perfectly clear water. Then she got another glass of muddy water from outside. Biol repeated the process. The dirty water became clean and pure again. "They can purify water," Yoonbi said with excitement. "Do you understand what this means? They could solve water pollution problems around the world, but that was only the beginning of their abilities." Later that day, Hanyul demonstrated something even more remarkable. Dae-ho was checking his tomato plants in the garden. Some of the plants looked sick with brown spots on their leaves. Hanul flew over to the diseased plants. The creature had learned to fly properly now that its wings were healed. It landed gently on a sick tomato plant. Silver light spread from its scales into the plant stem. Dae-ho watched in amazement as the brown spots disappeared. The leaves turned healthy green again. The plant straightened and grew taller right before his eyes. New flowers bloomed and tiny. Tomatoes began forming within minutes. "Incredible," Yoonbi whispered. She had been recording everything with her camera. They can accelerate plant growth and cure plant diseases. These abilities could end world hunger. Nuri showed its special talent that evening. Hyejin had cut her finger while preparing dinner. She wrapped it in a bandage, but the cut was deep and painful. Nuri approached her cautiously and made soft musical sounds. The creature gently touched the bandage with its small paw. Green light flowed from its scales. Hyejin felt warmth spreading through her finger. When she unwrapped the bandage, the cut was completely healed. Not even a scar remained. The three creatures were not just intelligent. They had powers that could change the world. But on the fourth day, their peaceful life was interrupted. A black government car pulled into the farm driveway. A man in a dark suit stepped out. He had official identification and a serious expression. "I am Dr. Woo Jin Park from the Ministry of Science," he announced. "We detected unusual energy readings from this area. I need to investigate." Daeho felt protective of the creatures immediately. They had trusted him and his family. He could not let anyone harm them or take them away. "We have nothing unusual here," Dr. Park Daeho said calmly. "Just crops and farm animals." But Dr. Park had equipment that detected the energy signatures from the creatures. His instruments led him straight to the barn where Biol, Hanul, and Nuri were resting. "What are those?" Dr. Park demanded when he saw the glowing beings. The three creatures sensed danger immediately. Their scales flared with bright light. They moved to stand between Dr. Park and the Kim family. Their musical voices rose in what sounded like warning calls. Dr. Park reached for a containment device. He wanted to capture the creatures for government study. But something amazing happened next. The creatures joined their lights together. Blue, silver, and green energy swirled around them. A protective barrier of light formed around the entire barn. Dr. Park's equipment stopped working. His containment device powered down. The barrier was not harmful. It simply prevented anyone with bad intentions from entering. Dr. Park could not get past it no matter how hard he tried. "You need to leave," Yunbi said firmly. "These beings are under our protection. They came to us for help, and we will not abandon them." The creatures began making complex light patterns. The patterns were clearly a form of communication. Yunbi watched carefully and started to understand their meaning. "They are trying to tell us something," she said. "Look at the patterns. They repeat in sequences like language." The light patterns showed images. Three small figures traveling through space. A damaged vehicle falling to Earth. Larger, darker shapes pursuing them through the stars. "They are not from around here," Yunbi translated. "They crash-landed, and something was chasing them." The creatures looked distressed as they showed more images. Massive ships in space, worlds going dark, other creatures like themselves calling for help across the galaxy. Dr. Park watched the light show with growing amazement. His anger changed to wonder as he realized what he was seeing. "They are refugees," he whispered. "They came here seeking safety." The creatures nodded when they heard this. Their golden eyes showed relief that someone finally understood. They had been trying to communicate this for days, but their story was not finished. The light patterns showed one more image that made everyone afraid. Dark ships approaching Earth's solar system. The same ships that had been chasing the three small creatures. Whatever had driven them to Earth was coming, and humanity was not prepared for what was heading their way. The three creatures moved closer to the Kim family. Their meaning was clear. They had chosen their protectors. Now the question was whether humanity could protect them in return. Dr. Park lowered his containment device. His scientific curiosity was stronger than his government orders. "We need to understand what they are," telling us, he said. "The fate of our world might depend on it." The peaceful life on Daeho's farm had ended. A larger story was beginning that would involve all of humanity. But the bond between the Kim family and their three glowing guests would be the key to everything that came next. Dr. Woo Jin Park had been staying at the farm for 5 days now. He brought equipment from his laboratory to study the creatures and their communication. Yunbi worked with him to decode the light patterns. What they discovered changed everything. They thought they knew. The three beings were not babies at all. They were ancient creatures called luminari. Each one was thousands of years old. Their small size and youthful appearance were part of their natural form when traveling between worlds. Biol, Hanul, and Nuri had been exploring the galaxy for centuries. They were scouts for their species. Their job was to find worlds with intelligent life that could become guardians of other planets. The Luminary had been watching Earth for a very long time. They observed how humans treated their world and each other. They saw wars and pollution and cruelty, but they also saw kindness and love and sacrifice. They saw people like Deho who would care for injured creatures without asking for anything in return. Through their light language, the Luminary told the story of their species. Long ago, they had been the guardians of many worlds. They protected young civilizations from dangers in space. They helped planets grow strong and peaceful. But something terrible had happened 500 years ago. A mechanical species called the Devourers had appeared from the edge of the galaxy. These machines consumed the life energy of entire planets. They turned green worlds into dead rocks floating in space. The Luminary fought the Devourers for decades, but the machines adapted to every weapon and strategy. Slowly, the Luminari were losing the war. Many of their protected worlds fell to the mechanical invaders. The surviving Luminari made a desperate decision. They would search for a species that could help them. Not just any species, but one with the perfect balance of strength and compassion. A species that could fight fiercely to protect others while still showing mercy to enemies. They had been searching for 3 centuries when they found Earth. Humans showed promise, but they were still developing. The Luminari decided to wait and watch. They sent small groups of scouts to different parts of the galaxy to continue searching. Biol, Hanel, and Nuri were one such group, but the Devourers had been hunting the scouts. The 3 Luminari were attacked near Jupiter. Their ship was damaged and they barely escaped to Earth. The crash landing in Deho's wheat field was not planned. Now the Devourers were coming to finish what they started. Their ships had been detected at the edge of the solar system. Earth had perhaps 2 weeks before they arrived. Dr. Park transmitted this information to his government superiors. Within hours, military officials arrived at the farm. General Lee brought soldiers and weapons specialists. They wanted to study the Luminari technology and prepare Earth's defenses. But the 3 scouts had surprising news. The time for waiting and watching was over. Humanity had already proven itself worthy through one simple act. Deho had found 3 injured beings in his field and helped them without question. He did not know they were aliens or that they had special powers. He helped them because they needed help. This was exactly the quality the Luminari had been searching for. Pure compassion without expectation of reward. The scouts began to change. Their small forms started growing larger and brighter. Their scales shifted from translucent to radiant crystal. Their wings spread wider and began generating fields of energy rather than just providing flight. "We are not baby dragons," Biol communicated through brilliant blue light patterns. "We are ancient guardians preparing for our true forms. Your father showed us that humans can be trusted with the responsibility of protecting worlds." The transformation took 3 days. During this time, more government officials arrived at the farm. Scientists, military leaders, and politicians all wanted to study the aliens and their technology. But the Luminary would only communicate with the Kim family and Dr. Park. They trusted these humans who had shown them kindness first. Everyone else was kept at a distance by shimmering energy barriers. As the scouts grew into their adult forms, they shared their knowledge. They taught Dr. Park how to create bioluminescent technology that could power cities without pollution. They showed Yunbi how to accelerate crop growth to feed millions of people. They demonstrated healing techniques that could cure diseases humans had fought for centuries. But most importantly, they revealed the truth about the coming war. The Devourers were not evil by choice. They had once been an organic species like humans and Luminari, but they had lost their home planet to a cosmic disaster. In their desperation to survive, they had replaced their bodies with machines piece by piece. Over thousands of years, they forgot what it meant to be alive. They began seeing organic life as inefficient and wasteful. They convinced themselves that consuming life energy was actually helping the universe become more organized and logical. The Devourers could be defeated, but not through weapons alone. They needed to remember what they had lost. They needed to see that organic life had value beyond efficiency and logic. This was why the Luminari needed human allies. Humans had something unique among all the species in the galaxy. They could show fierce love for their enemies even while fighting them. They could hold on to hope even in the darkest situations. The adult Luminari were magnificent beings of pure energy wrapped in crystalline forms. They were 20 feet tall, with wings that generated rainbow light. Their voices could be heard across continents when they chose, but they still preferred to spend their time with Daeho in his simple farmhouse kitchen. They still enjoyed watching He-Jin cook dinner and listening to her gentle conversations. Power had not changed their appreciation for simple kindness. The farm became the center of Earth's preparation for the coming invasion, but it remained a place of warmth and family bonds. The Luminari had chosen their human guardians well. Now humanity would have to prove it deserved that choice. The Devourers were only days away, and Earth's real test was about to begin. The Devourers arrived on a Tuesday morning when Daeho was feeding his chickens. Dark shapes appeared in Earth's sky like storm clouds that moved with purpose. The ships were massive structures of black metal and pulsing red lights. They did not come with warnings or demands. They simply began their work. Energy beams reached down from the ships toward Earth's major cities. But these were not weapons meant to destroy buildings. They were designed to drain the life force from everything they touched. Plants withered and died where the beams landed. Animals collapsed and turned to dust. Even the soil became gray and lifeless. The Devourers were harvesting Earth's biological energy to feed their mechanical civilization. Military forces around the world launched missiles and fighter jets at the alien ships. The weapons passed harmlessly through energy shields that surrounded each Devourer vessel. Nuclear weapons were prepared, but the Luminari warned they would only provide more energy for the invaders to consume. Humanity's most advanced technology was useless against an enemy that had been perfecting warfare for thousands of years. But Daeho was not thinking about advanced technology as he watched his chickens turn to ash. He was thinking about his responsibility to protect his family and his new alien friends. The 3 adult Luminari stood in the farmyard with their crystalline bodies blazing like small suns. They were magnificent and terrible in their true forms. But they were also afraid. We cannot defeat them alone. Biol communicated with patterns of blue fire. Our species tried for decades and failed. The Devourers adapt to every attack we make. Then what do? Dr. Park asked. He had been coordinating with governments around the world, but every defense plan was failing. We do what humans do best, Daeho said quietly. We protect what matters to us. The farmer walked to his barn and returned with simple tools, a shovel, a watering can, and packets of seeds. His family watched in confusion as he began digging holes in his vegetable garden. What are you doing? Father Yunbi asked. I am planting, Daeho replied. If they want to drain life from our world, then we will give them more life than they can handle. The Luminari understood immediately. Their light patterns shifted to excitement and hope. Of course, they communicated to each other. Humans do not just fight, they create. He-Jin brought more seeds from their storage shed. Yunbi called her university friends and told them to bring every seed and seedling they could find. Dr. Park contacted agricultural departments across the country. Within hours, farmers from across the region were arriving at the Kim farm. They brought tractors and tools and millions of seeds. They did not fully understand the plan, but they trusted Daeho's judgment. The Luminari began working with the humans. Their abilities to accelerate plant growth and purify soil made the work incredibly fast. What should have taken months happened in hours. Fields of crops sprouted and grew to maturity in minutes. Fruit trees blossomed and bore fruit before the devourer ships could drain them. Every time the alien beams destroyed a field, the humans and Luminari would plant 3 more in different locations. The devourers noticed the increased biological activity. More ships descended from orbit to harvest the new growth. But something strange began happening to their energy collection systems. The life force they were draining was different from other worlds they had consumed. It carried something extra, along with the biological energy. It carried human emotions and intentions, love for the growing plants, hope for the future, determination to protect home and family, joy in working together with neighbors. These feelings traveled through the energy beams into the devourer ships. The mechanical beings had not experienced organic emotions for thousands of years. The sudden flood of human feelings caused confusion in their systems. Some devourers began, remembering what they had lost when they abandoned their original bodies. But the ship commanders ordered the harvesting to continue. They increased the power of their energy beams and targeted population centers directly. This was when humanity's second strength revealed itself. Taemin Kim had been serving in the military when the invasion began. He returned home to help defend his family's farm. But he brought something unexpected with him. His unit had been experimenting with bioluminescent technology based on luminary science. They had created weapons that channeled life energy instead of destroying it. The weapons could not kill, but they could heal and protect and strengthen. Soon soldiers around the world were using similar technology. Instead of fighting the devourers with traditional weapons, they used tools that created and preserved life. When devourer ground forces landed to secure harvesting sites, they found themselves facing human defenders who could instantly grow barriers of thorny vines. Soldiers who could heal their wounds in seconds and keep fighting. Warriors who could purify contaminated water and breathe life back into dead soil. The humans were not trying to destroy their enemies. They were trying to restore them. Some of the older devourers began malfunctioning as suppressed memories surfaced. They remembered green skies and flowing water. They remembered the taste of fruit and the feeling of wind on organic skin. A few devourer units stopped fighting and began examining the plants that humans kept creating. They touched flowers with metal fingers and watched crops grow under alien care. But the invasion was still succeeding. Earth's major cities were losing power as their energy was drained. Millions of people were evacuating to rural areas where the life-creating efforts provided some protection. The Luminari scouts made a difficult decision. They would have to reveal their species' most closely guarded secret, the ultimate weapon that even the devourers feared. It was not a weapon of destruction. It was something far more dangerous to mechanical minds. It was the power to restore lost memories and forgotten emotions, to make artificial beings remember what they used to be before fear drove them to abandon their organic nature. The battle for Earth was about to become a battle for the souls of 2 civilizations, and the outcome would depend on whether a simple farmer's compassion could teach an entire galaxy how to heal rather than harm. The transformation began at dawn on the 7th day of invasion. Biol, Hanol, and Nuri had grown to their full adult size. They stood 30 feet tall with wings that stretched across Daeho's entire farmyard. Their crystalline bodies pulsed, with energy that made the air itself sing with harmonic frequencies. But they were preparing for something even more dramatic. The final stage of Luminari evolution that they had kept secret for thousands of years. "We must become pure light Biol," explained to the Kim family. "It is dangerous. We may not survive. But it is the only way to reach the minds of the Devourers." The three beings joined their energy fields together. Blue, silver, and green lights swirled around them like a miniature galaxy. Their solid forms began dissolving as they transformed into beings of pure consciousness and energy. The light expanded across the farm, then across the region, then around the entire planet. Every human on Earth could suddenly see and hear the luminary scouts. But more importantly, every devourer could see them too. The mechanical beings stopped their harvesting operations. For the first time in centuries, they were looking at something their sensors could not fully analyze or categorize: pure life force without a physical container. But the Luminari were not attacking. Instead, they were sharing memories. Images flowed through the combined consciousness of all three species. Humans saw the Devourers as they had been millions of years ago. Organic beings with families and emotions and dreams for the future. They had been explorers and artists and farmers, much like humanity itself. The Devourers saw themselves as they used to be. They remembered laughter and tears and the simple pleasure of eating food grown in their own gardens. They remembered what they had given up in their desperate quest for survival, and both species saw the Luminari as they truly were: ancient guardians who had watched over young civilizations for eons. Beings who chose to protect rather than conquer, to nurture rather than consume. The memory sharing had an unexpected effect. Some of the human soldiers began developing abilities similar to the Luminari. They could channel life energy and accelerate healing. They could communicate through light patterns and sense the emotions of other beings. Tae-Min Kim was among the first humans to experience this change. His bioluminescent weapons evolved into something more powerful. He could now project barriers of living light that healed rather than harmed. His squad became a rescue unit that could restore life to areas the Devourers had drained. Dr. Park found that his scientific understanding had expanded beyond normal human limits. He could see energy patterns that revealed the true nature of matter and consciousness. He began developing technology that bridged the gap between organic and mechanical systems, but the most important changes were happening to the Devourers themselves. The ship commanders tried to block the memory transmissions, but it was too late. Their crews were beginning to remember their origins. Some Devourer soldiers stopped following orders and began protecting human settlements instead of harvesting them. A group of Devourers landed near Daeho's farm, but instead of energy weapons, they carried primitive tools. They wanted to learn how to grow plants again. They had not touched living soil for thousands of years. Daeho watched through his kitchen window as massive mechanical beings knelt in his garden. They picked up handfuls of earth with gentle reverence. Some of them began weeping tears of liquid metal as suppressed emotions returned. He walked outside carrying a basket of seeds. The Devourers tensed when they saw him approach. They had been programmed to see organic life as the enemy. But Daeho simply sat down next to the largest Devourer and began planting seeds. He showed the mechanical being how to make holes in the soil and cover the seeds with care. The Devourer watched with instruments that had been designed for war, but were now recording every detail of this peaceful act. Slowly, carefully, it tried to copy Daeho's movements. When the first green sprout pushed through the soil, the Devourer made a sound that could only be described as joy. It had been tens of thousands of years since any of their species had created life instead of consuming it. More Devourers began defecting from their invasion fleet. They landed on Earth seeking to learn about organic existence. Human farmers and gardeners became their teachers. Cities that had been evacuation zones became integration centers where two species learned to work together. But the war was not over. The Devourer High Command refused to accept what was happening to their forces. They prepared to destroy Earth completely rather than lose their mechanical purity. Massive ships moved into position around the planet. These were not harvesting vessels, but pure weapons of annihilation. If they could not consume Earth's life force, they would eliminate it entirely. The hybrid human luminary forces rose to meet this final threat. Taemin led squadrons of soldiers who could fly through space using light-based propulsion. Dr. Park coordinated defense networks that channeled the planet's entire biosphere into protective shields. But their secret weapon was not advanced technology or powerful energy beams. It was Dae-ho himself. The simple farmer had been changed by his contact with the Luminari. He had become a focal point for human compassion and determination. His ability to care for others without judgment had been amplified to planetary scale. As the Devourer death ships prepared to fire, Dae-ho's consciousness touched every mind in their fleets. He showed them not arguments or threats, but simple memories. A farmer caring for injured creatures, a family sharing meals with strangers, neighbors helping each other during difficult times. The Devourer commanders found their weapon systems shutting down, not because of technological interference, but because their own crews were refusing to destroy a world that had shown them such kindness. The war ended not with a battle, but with a revelation. The Devourers remembered that survival was meaningless without something worth living for. And humans discovered that their greatest strength was not their weapons or their technology, but their capacity to see potential for good even in their enemies. The three species began working together to heal the damage caused by thousands of years of conflict. Earth became the center of a new kind of civilization based on cooperation rather than conquest. But the real victory belonged to a humble farmer who had simply done what felt right when he found three small creatures in his wheat field. 5 years after the invasion that became an integration, Dae-ho Kim stood in his cosmic garden and smiled at the morning sun. His farm had grown beyond anything he could have imagined. What started as simple wheat fields now stretched across 3 continents and 2 moons. But it was not the size that made him proud. It was what grew there. Plants from 1,000 different worlds flourished side by side. Devourer engineers had learned to create mechanical roots that could support organic growth in any environment. Luminary guardians used their light-based abilities to provide perfect growing conditions for species that had never shared the same space before. And everywhere, beings from across the galaxy came to learn what humans called farming, but what had become something much more important. They were learning how to nurture life instead of just surviving. Biol approached through the morning mist. The ancient Luminari scout had chosen to maintain a partially physical form so it could continue working directly with soil and seeds. Its crystalline body was smaller now, but still glowed with gentle blue light. The morning harvest is ready, Biol, communicated through patterns of light that Dae-ho could now read as easily as spoken words. The Terran wheat, the Andromedan fruit pods, and the reformed Devourer protein plants are all mature. Dae-ho nodded and picked up his tools. After all, these years he still preferred to do much of the work by hand. There was something important about touching each plant and understanding its individual needs. As they worked together, other beings joined them. A group of young devourers who had volunteered to have their mechanical bodies partially converted, back to organic forms. They moved more slowly now, but they could feel soil between their fingers and taste the sweetness of fresh fruit. Yunbi arrived with her morning class of interspecies biology students. She had become Earth's first professor of cosmic agriculture. Her students included humans, reformed devourers, young luminari, and representatives from dozens of species that had been contacted since the integration began. Today we are studying symbiotic relationships, she announced to her class. How different life forms can help each other grow stronger instead of competing for resources. Her students spread out across the garden to observe and take notes. A Devourer student worked with a human partner to understand how mechanical precision could support organic growth without overwhelming it. A young Luminari practiced channeling just enough energy to help plants without burning them with too much light. Dr. Park had built his new laboratory in the converted barn where the 3 scouts had first been sheltered. His research now focused on healing rather than studying. Teams of scientists from multiple species worked together to solve problems that had plagued the galaxy for millennia. They had already eliminated several diseases that had affected both organic and mechanical beings. They had developed new technologies that could restore dead worlds to life. Most importantly, they had created communication systems that allowed any species to share ideas and emotions across any distance. But the greatest achievement was still growing in fields and gardens across the galaxy. Taimin had become commander of the Guardian Corps. This was not a military organization, but something entirely new. Teams of humans, Luminari, and reformed Devourers traveled to worlds that were struggling with conflict or environmental damage. They did not arrive as conquerors or even as traditional peacekeepers. They came as farmers and gardeners and healers. They showed struggling civilizations how to grow food together and share resources fairly. They taught the art of caring for others without expecting reward. The approach worked better than any military intervention ever had. Worlds that had been at war for centuries were learning to cooperate. Species that had seen each other as enemies were discovering shared interests and common dreams. Hyejin ran the hospitality center that had grown around their original farmhouse. Beings from across the galaxy came to learn human customs of sharing meals and telling stories. The simple act of eating together had become a powerful tool for building understanding between very different species. She still cooked many of the meals herself, but now her kitchen helpers included Devourers, who had learned to appreciate flavors they had not experienced in thousands of years, and Luminari, who enjoyed the social aspects of food preparation even though they did not need to. As the day progressed, Deho found himself in his favorite spot, the original wheat field where he had discovered 3 injured creatures that changed his life forever. The wheat still grew there, but it was surrounded by a memorial garden. Plants from the home worlds of every species in the Alliance grew together in perfect harmony. At the center stood a simple stone marker with words in dozens of languages. Here, compassion became the seed of a new galaxy. Deho was reading these words when a familiar voice spoke behind him. "Do you ever regret the changes your simple kindness brought to the universe?" He turned to see Biol in its fully evolved form. The being of pure light was beautiful and terrible and completely alien. But Deho could still see traces of the small injured creature he had carried home in his arms. "Never," he replied honestly. "Every being deserves a chance to grow and become something better than what they were. That is what farming taught me long before I met you." The Luminari scout pulsed with warm light that felt like approval and affection. Around the galaxy, other worlds were learning the same lesson. Not through conquest or force, but through the patient example of beings who chose to nurture rather than exploit. Children of every species played together in gardens that would have been impossible before the integration. They learned each other's languages and customs and ways of seeing the universe. They grew up believing that cooperation was normal and that caring for others was the most important skill anyone could develop. The Devourers had established new colonies where they practiced what they called organic engineering. They used their technological abilities to support biological systems rather than replace them. Their cities were living environments where mechanical and organic components worked together seamlessly. The Luminari had ended their long isolation and become active teachers and guides for younger species. They shared knowledge freely and helped other civilizations avoid the mistakes that had led to so much conflict in the past. And humanity had found its true calling among the stars, not as warriors or explorers or conquerors, but as gardeners on a galactic scale. They specialized in taking care of others and helping different species learn to take care of each other. As evening approached, Deho walked back toward his house. 3 figures waited for him on the porch. Beol, Haneul, and Nuri, in their comfortable, smaller forms, sitting exactly where they had recovered from their injuries years ago. The 3 beings who had arrived as refugees had become the foundation of a new kind of civilization. They had chosen their human protectors well. "Thank you," Deho said to them as he had said every evening for 5 years. The Luminari scouts glowed softly in the gathering darkness. Their light patterns spelled out words that had become the motto of the new alliance: growth through care, strength through gentleness, victory through love. In fields across the galaxy, other farmers were ending their own days of tending and nurturing, and helping life flourish. The universe was becoming a garden where every species could grow according to its nature while contributing to the health of the whole. And it had all started with one man who found 3 injured creatures in his wheat field and decided to help them heal.